Is Ferrari truly ready to break with his past full of strategic errors and fight again for a championship? Or what we saw in Miami and China is nothing more than another red mirage? Ferrari opted for a risky philosophy because he knows that mediocrity in this category is not forgiven. If you don't risk, don't earn. Charles Leclerc was the first to give a sample of what the SF25 could offer during the free practice of the Miami Grand Prix. In a single session available under the sprint format, he placed his car in the second position with a time of 1:27,484, leaving only 3/10 of Oscar Piastri. This result was no coincidence or work of a miraculous return. It was the reflection of a car that, when it is at its right point, can compete hand in hand with the best. But he also exposed one of the keys to the performance of the SF25. He needs an extremely specific configuration to perform to the maximum. This makes the car a vehicle difficult to drive, especially in classification, where any minimum deviation of the ideal setup can seriously affect stability and general performance. The previous preparation was fundamental. Ferrari has invested a lot of resources in simulation and factory work, anticipating the limitations of time on the track imposed by the sprint calendar. Leclerc highlighted it clearly: the team arrives strong when there is little margin to rehearse. And it's true. China's references, where they also ran under this format, support it. However, this approach also has a consequence. The margin of error is minimal. If the simulation does not translate precisely on the track, the problems emerge immediately. And that was the case of Lewis Hamilton, which ended in the 13th position, more than a second of the leader, without having managed to complete an optimal return by Oliver Behrman's accident. Hamilton continues in full adaptation process. Despite his experience and talent, the leap to Ferrari in a car like the SF25, so particular in his behavior, is not easy. In Australia and in the early stages of China, the British experienced the complexity of tame a vehicle that rewards millimeter precision and punishes any deviation in driving. His softer and more progressive style contrasts with Leclerc's most aggressive approach, which forced the team to work with two parallel philosophies on tuning. This internal divergence is a reflection of the great challenge Ferrari faces in 2025, to make the best of its two pilots without compromising the technical coherence of the development of the car. This start of the season has made something very clear: Ferrari has potential. But for this potential to transform into consistent results, it needs more than pure speed. It requires an impeccable execution, an impeccable prior preparation level, and above all, a deep understanding of your work tool. The SF25 can be the weapon that Maranello has been waiting for years, but its edge depends entirely on how its pilots and engineers sharpened every weekend. Are they prepared to hold that pressure? That is the question we started answering in the next races. Ferrari's competitive start in 2025 has been full of contrasts. The same team that showed pure speed in classification has also demonstrated structural weaknesses in career management. In the Australian Grand Prix, for example, Charles Leclerc managed to climb from the 7th to 5th place in the first laps, evidencing a strong rhythm. However, strategic decisions during rain and chaos of that day exposed the blind points of Ferrari again. They stayed too long on the track before the change to intermediate tires, an error that dragged both pilots towards compromised positions, without real possibility of recovering ground when the track began to dry. These failures show that, although the car has improved, the team still fights with the reaction time and execution at critical moments. In the same circuit, Leclerc left one of the most symbolic images of the weekend, running with the damaged front wing after a touch with Hamilton. The decision not to enter boxes to change the piece, with the aim of not losing positions, had clear consequences. The car lost aerodynamic load, affecting curve stability. However, this loss generated a gain in peak speed in lines. It was an extreme example of real-time tactical adaptation, where the pilot had to compensate with driving style that the car could no longer offer aerodynamically. Despite the sacrifice, Leclerc managed to stay competitive, but it was clear that decision-making is still a pending subject. In the case of Lewis Hamilton, his evolution has been more progressive but no less significant. After a difficult debut in Australia, where he was trapped in traffic and affected by the erratic strategy of the team, in China he starred in a brilliant sprint classification. That's where his adaptation to SF25 really was seen. With a solid and precise return, he left the McLaren behind and was close to overcoming Verstappen. Hamilton himself acknowledged that in Australia tried to accelerate his learning too much, underestimating the complexity of the car. In Shanghai, however, he applied the appropriate adjustments, modified his style to approach Leclerc in certain curve phases, and the results were immediate. The difference between both pilots also begins to reflect in their relationship with the team. Leclerc has been very vocal about the extreme demands of the car, stating that it requires a millimeter tuning to function well. Hamilton, meanwhile, has opted for progressive integration, trusting that natural adaptation will give you the necessary stability throughout the season. This internal technical duality presents both an opportunity and a challenge for Ferrari. If they manage to capitalize on the individual strengths of each pilot without fragmenting the development of the car, they could turn that difference into a competitive advantage. But if they fail to unify technical criteria, they could face problems in the medium and long term. These contrasts have also been reflected on sprint weekends, where there is only one practical session and everything is decided in less time. Leclerc seems to feel comfortable with this format for the previous preparation he performs with his team. Hamilton, on the other hand, needs more time on track to refine sensations. This imbalance between simulator preparation and real-time adjustment can play an important role in future races, where the sprint format will be increasingly frequent. Ferrari therefore must not only solve how to put your car to be tuning, but how to optimize its performance under logistics and strategic pressures that do not allow margin of error. This is where it will be defined if the team is ready to compete from U to U for a complete championship. At this point of the season, Ferrari has shown that he has the necessary tools to be competitive, but he has not yet found a way to turn his potential into consistent results. The speed is there, both in fast and stint long turns, but the execution remains a challenge. The team needs to make firm decisions that allow it to stabilize its performance without compromising its margin of evolution. One of the most urgent steps is to refine the correlation between simulator work and track reality. Although they have proven to be well prepared in limited sessions, such as those of sprint weekends, the exact translation of that preparation is not always paying fruit. The next logical step is to invest in improving the interpretation of data and the tactical response during races. Another key element in this consolidation process is the management of its pilots. Leclerc and Hamilton represent two different schools of driving and focus. One is visceral, aggressive, capable of squeezing every millimeter of the circuit. The other is methodical, strategic, capable of adapting its style with surgical precision. Ferrari must find a way to take advantage of both talents without dividing the efforts of the technical team. This implies making coherent technical decisions that benefit both, either develop parallel lines of setup without affecting the joint evolution of the SF25. The challenge is how to prevent these differences from deriving internal frictions or technical mismatches that compromise collective performance. The calendar will also play a fundamental role. With clues as different as Imola, Monaco, or Barcelona ahead, Ferrari will have to show that he can maintain his level in different technical and climatic contexts. Until now, they have shown in classification but have failed in strategy. They have achieved good times with clean air, but they suffer when they must make decisions under pressure. In narrow circuits and difficult to advance as Monaco, a strategic error can cancel all the work of a weekend. Therefore, the next dates will not only be performance tests, but also operational maturity exams. And then there is the external threat. McLaren and Red Bull are not waiting. While those of Woking maintain a line of silent but effective evolution, Red Bull is being reorganized after an erratic start, with decisions such as the replacement of pilots seeking to reactivate their competitive structure. Ferrari therefore cannot afford prolonged errors. If they really aspire to fight for the championship, they must raise their general level, both technical and human. Opportunities in Formula One are limited and margins tits. Each decision, every return, each stop in boxes counts. From now on, every weekend will be a real-time evaluation of the true character of Ferrari. It is no longer enough to show that they can be fast. They must prove that they can be constant, precise, and resilient. The talent is, the resources are, the car has given signs of competitiveness. What is missing is total cohesion between engineering, strategy, and execution. If they manage to find that balance, they could be facing their best opportunity in more than a decade to return to the top of world motoring. If not, they will continue to be the team that always promises, but it rarely complies. Ferrari has started the 2025 season with a mixture of encouraging signals and clear warnings. They have a competitive car, a pair of first-level pilots, and a technical preparation that has given fruits at key moments. But they have also shown that old errors still lurk, especially when the pressure increases and decision-making must be immediate. The big question is not whether Ferrari can win races, because they have already demonstrated it. The true unknown is whether they can sustain that level throughout a championship as demanding and with rivals as prepared as McLaren, Mercedes, or Red Bull. What is at stake this year for Ferrari is not just a title, It is its credibility as a real contender after years of frustrations and false promises. Every detail counts. Each point lost by strategy, each failed configuration, each boxing failure can make the difference between a runner-up and a historical victory. The margin of error is non-existent. The pressure is immense, but so is the opportunity. With the SF25, they have a solid enough platform to build something. Now everything will depend on how they manage the next weekends and what decisions make at the times when everything is about to be defined. And now I ask you, do you think Ferrari has finally learned from his mistakes? Do you see in this team the necessary character to compete until the last race? Or are we facing another season of illusions that will fade as soon as the pressure increases? I'm interested to know how you see this panorama. Leave your opinion in the comments, and if you are passionate about the technical analysis and the strategic narrative of Formula One, do not forget to follow the channel. What comes in Imola can mark a before and after in the Ferrari campaign, and here we will be to crumble it in detail.